There are moments in life that rip you open, expose your deepest insecurities, and make you question everything you thought was real. For me, that moment came not with a bang, but with a cruel, mocking laugh that echoed through my own living room. They say you learn everything you need to know about a person by how they treat you when you're most vulnerable. Man, I wish someone had told me that earlier. My name's Noah. I'm 28, and for most of my 20s, I genuinely thought I had life figured out. I had a solid job as a UX designer, paid my bills, and was finally rebuilding my confidence after a pretty rough high school experience. And I had a fiancée, Claire, who I truly believed loved me. When I first met Claire, it felt like I'd stumbled into this incredible reward I didn't even know I deserved. She was brilliant, quick-witted, stunning, that effortlessly cool. I woke up like this kind of beautiful. She commanded attention the second she walked into a room. And when she singled me out at a networking event 3 years ago, I honestly couldn't believe my luck. Claire had this undeniable magnetism, but being with her always felt like a constant audition. I was grateful to be there, sure, but I never quite felt like I'd truly landed the part. She'd tease me, and I'd just laugh it off. She'd roll her eyes, and I'd smile. She'd crack jokes at my expense in front of her friends, and I'd brush them away, convincing myself, oh, that's just her being funny, edgy, charming. I kept telling myself I was so incredibly lucky. Guys like me, the awkward, artsy types who wrote bad poetry in spiral-bound notebooks and dodged social events in high school, we don't usually end up with women like Claire. So I tried even harder. I went to every event she wanted. I dressed exactly how she liked. I even let her pick out her new couch when we moved in together, even though, honestly, I hated how stiff it was. It started subtly, with little things you dismiss. But looking back, the warning signs were flashing everywhere. She had this knack for testing people, for poking at the very edges of your confidence, just to see how much you'd bend before you finally broke. She'd deliver these cutting remarks, and then just shrug. It's not personal, babe. Just a joke, especially when she'd roast me in front of her coworkers. Or, relax, I'm just keeping you humble, after she posted side-by-side photos of my glow-up with a caption like, hard to believe this is the same guy. And I'd laugh along with everyone else, even as a knot of dread twisted in my stomach. I told myself it was fine. I loved her, or at least I thought I did. I was so convinced that every relationship had its quirks, that maybe her teasing was just her unique way of showing affection. So I played along. I genuinely believed that being the punchline of a few jokes was a small price to pay for having someone like her on my arm. My biggest mistake, perhaps, was thinking I had to earn my place, that I should always be grateful. Then came game night. That's when everything changed. Claire lived for hosting. She absolutely thrived in social settings. She'd spent the entire week meticulously planning everything. The snacks, the perfect playlist, the games. Her invites were always a little extra, but that was just Claire. She loved to control the room, loved having all eyes on her. That night, our apartment was buzzing with about 10 people. Mostly her friends, a few other couples, her brother Jack, and his girlfriend. I'd even invited one of my co-workers, Adam, just so I wouldn't feel completely isolated. We were playing a game, some mix of charades and truth or dare. If you passed on a challenge, the group could dare you to do something else. It was mostly harmless fun, embarrassing childhood stories, karaoke, that sort of thing. Then Jack, her brother, piped up, almost jokingly, Claire, I dare you to read one of Noah's love letters. I bet they're Shakespearean masterpieces. Everyone chuckled. I even let out a nervous laugh, fully expecting her to wave it off or deflect with a clever retort. Instead, that familiar sparkle lit up her eyes, the one that meant she was about to put on a performance. Oh, she grinned, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. You mean his teenage poetry stash? Then she added, because I definitely still have those. My stomach plummeted. She stood up, and headed straight for our bedroom. I should have stopped her. I should have stood right up, right then, and said, "Hey, no, that's private." But I froze. I was still trapped in that old habit of trying to be the cool, easygoing guy. The guy who could always take a joke. The guy she wouldn't be embarrassed to introduce to her friends. When she came back, she was holding a wrinkled, red notebook. I hadn't seen it in years. My old poetry journal from high school. My eyes widened. "Wait, why do you even have that?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. She just shrugged, flipping through the pages like it was a restaurant menu. I found it when we moved in together. Thought it was hilarious. Everyone in the room was already stifling giggles, just waiting. I wanted the floor to swallow me whole. "Come on, Claire," I pleaded, my voice barely a whisper. "That's personal." She just waved me off, utterly dismissive. "Oh, relax, it's cute. Listen to this." And then she began. Her eyes are stars. Her laugh a symphony of springtime. She paused, looking up, a theatrical smirk on her face. Oh my God, this is gold. Raucous laughter exploded around me. My hands were clammy, my cheeks burned. I forced a smile, telling myself, "It's fine. They're just words. Teenage words. It doesn't matter." But she kept going, putting on this exaggerated, dramatic voice. Every time she looks at me, I forget how to breathe. I think that's what love is supposed to feel like. Dangerous, dizzying, like falling forever. She doubled over, gasping with laughter. Jack clapped, practically howling. Someone else fake swooned. I looked over at Adam, my co-worker, who gave me this painfully awkward, pitying smile. That's when it hit me. I felt utterly exposed. Not just embarrassed, but completely gutted. She wasn't simply reading the words. I could have tolerated that. No, she was mocking them. Mocking me. Mocking the earnest, vulnerable version of me who dared to feel something real, even if he didn't have the words to articulate it perfectly. Then came the phrase that shattered something deep inside me. She snapped the notebook shut, her eyes still sparkling with cruel amusement. "Honestly," she declared to the room, "he used to be so pathetic. Good thing I fixed him." Jack howled in agreement. "You were doing the Lord's work." In that exact moment, the noise, the laughter, everything just stopped. For me, at least. I didn't even feel anger. I just felt this profound, aching hollowness, like someone had opened a window in my chest, and all the warmth, all the air had just rushed out. I looked around the room, at all those faces, and realized with a sickening clarity that I didn't know who I was anymore. Not in this version of my life. I had become the punchline in my own story, and she was the one delivering it with glee. So I stood up. I walked over to Claire, a fixed smile on my face, leaned in, kissed her cheek, and said, "You really killed it tonight." She beamed, utterly self-satisfied, completely missing the deadness in my voice. Then I simply walked out the front door. I didn't slam it. I didn't yell. I just left. I didn't even grab my coat. I couldn't go home that night. I just couldn't. Instead, I drove for hours, no destination in mind. Just me, my swirling thoughts, and the useless click, click, click of my blinker as I sat at empty intersections, trying desperately to process what had just happened. I remember pulling into a gas station well after midnight, buying some gum and a bottle of water, and just sitting in the parking lot, staring out the windshield, watching the world blur past. I didn't cry then. No tears. Just this overwhelming feeling of being utterly stupid. Stupid for letting it go on for so long. Stupid for confusing constant humiliation with genuine love. The next morning, I checked into a hotel and shut off my phone. I needed space. Air. Silence. I needed to remember what my own voice sounded like when it wasn't trying to impress or apologize or constantly diffuse someone else's awful behavior. That first week away from Claire was the quietest week of my entire adult life. It was also the very first time I truly started to hear myself again. When I finally turned my phone back on, it was a tidal wave. 12 missed calls, 9 voicemails, 37 unread messages from Claire. It started lighthearted, almost casual. "Babe, come home. Everyone's asking where you went." Then they turned a little more confused. "Seriously, are you okay? Call me." Then guilt-tripping. "I was just joking. You're being super dramatic." And finally, just plain bitter. "You're really just going to ghost me after one little joke? Grow up." That last message, I didn't reply to it, or any after it. A few days later, while she was at work, I went back to the apartment and packed up every single thing that was truly mine. I didn't touch the stiff couch she'd chosen, or the ridiculous decor she'd insisted made us look like a power couple. I left the framed photos. The home is where the Wi-Fi connects automatically sign the color-coded mugs. I took my books, my clothes, a few essential kitchen tools. And yes, I took that old red notebook, my teenage poetry journal. Not because I was proud of the contents, but because it was mine, and she never, ever should have touched it. I signed a lease on a small one-bedroom condo in a quieter part of town. It wasn't fancy, but it had these huge windows, tons of sunlight, and most importantly, it had peace. For a while, I left the walls completely bare. It felt like I could finally breathe again. Claire, naturally, didn't handle it well. For weeks, she barraged me with long, rambling texts. How I'd blindsided her, how I was overreacting, how I'd thrown away 3 years over a party. But I knew with absolute certainty it wasn't just about that one night. It was about everything. The relentless jabs, the slow, insidious erosion of my self-worth disguised as playful banter, the way she always needed to be one step above me, even if it meant stepping all over me to get there. When I still didn't respond, her messages turned bitter and desperate again. She started telling her mutual friends that I had emotional issues, that I wasn't ready for a real relationship, and that I was probably having some sort of midlife crisis. A few of those friends reached out to check in, and I thanked them politely. I didn't explain myself. I didn't defend myself. I didn't need to. Instead, I poured all my energy into rebuilding myself. I started therapy for the first time in my life. Turns out, there's a whole lot you bury when you spend your formative years constantly trying to be enough. My therapist, Rick, a kind, soft-spoken guy, asked me one day why I had stayed in that relationship for so long. And I told him the raw truth, because I thought I was lucky just to have anyone at all. He didn't laugh. He didn't judge. He just nodded gently and said, "Let's work on that." So I did. Slowly, carefully, I reconnected with old friends I hadn't seen in years. I started writing again. Not cringeworthy poetry this time, but essays, journal entries, sometimes just messy thoughts I didn't want to lose. I started running. Not far at first, just around the block. But eventually, I could go 5 miles without stopping. It felt incredible to just move without needing anyone's permission. A few months later, I got a promotion at work, lead designer. I even gave a presentation to our CEO and didn't stumble a single time. My confidence wasn't roaring back in a sudden surge. No, it was creeping in, slowly, steadily, like a sunrise. Quiet, but absolutely undeniable. I didn't hear from Claire for a while after that. Then, in early spring, an email landed in my inbox. Subject line, "Please read." It was long. Paragraph after paragraph about how she realized she'd gone too far, how she was going through things too, and how she didn't mean to hurt me. She said she missed me, that no one understood her the way I did, that she thought we were meant to grow old together. She asked if I could just meet her for coffee. I read that email 3 times. Then I closed it. No reply. A week later, she showed up at my building. It was pouring rain. I just gotten back from the gym, my hoodie soaked right through. I saw her standing outside the front lobby. No umbrella, no coat, just completely drenched. She looked like some character from a dramatic movie, pleading for a last chance. The moment she saw me through the glass, her face lit up like I was her only lifeline. She started knocking frantically on the door, desperate, as if I might vanish again if she didn't act fast. I stepped outside calmly. "Noah," she gasped, half laughing, half sobbing. "I've been trying to reach you. Please just talk to me." She grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly tight. "I made a mistake, okay? I was stupid. I thought I was being funny, but I hurt you, and I hate myself for it. Please, Noah, can we just talk?" Before I could even respond, my phone rang. I looked down. It was her mom. I answered, and before I could utter a single word, she launched into it. "Noah, please, just give her another chance. She's been absolutely miserable without you. She knows she messed up." I looked at Claire then, shivering, mascara streaking her face, her eyes wide and pleading. And for the first time in years, I felt absolutely nothing. No guilt, no conflict, no sense that I owed her a single shred of forgiveness. Calmly, clearly, I spoke into the phone. She burned that bridge out loud. Then I hung up, and as Claire started to say something, anything, I simply walked past her, quietly, gently, back into the building. And I didn't look back. But that wasn't the end of it. I wish I could tell you Claire just vanished from my life after that night. That she simply stood in the rain, watched me walk away, and quietly accepted the consequences of her own actions. But that wasn't Claire. Letting go meant losing control, and Claire absolutely hated to lose. Over the next few days, the messages resumed. These long, rambling walls of text, swinging wildly between pathetic self-pity, outright deflection, and thinly veiled accusations. One message would declare, "I understand now. I was awful, and you didn't deserve that." Only to be followed by another. "You could have told me how hurt you were instead of just ghosting me. You humiliated me." Then came the guilt traps. "I'm in therapy now, too. I'm trying to be better. Don't I deserve a chance?" I didn't reply to a single one. Not because I wanted to be cruel, but because I finally understood something profound. Some people apologize only to reopen the door, not because they're genuinely sorry. Claire didn't want to make amends. She wanted her audience back. And I was utterly, completely done being a spectator in my own humiliation. Life, meanwhile, was unfolding in the most unexpected, almost poetic ways. My promotion at work led to this incredible opportunity, co-leading a major UI redesign for a tech product that absolutely exploded, going viral in the startup world. Suddenly, I was being invited to speak on panels, give interviews, collaborate with firms I once only dreamed of even applying to. For the very first time, people were looking at me, not as the quiet guy in the background, not as some silent support beam, but as someone with something valuable to say. I distinctly remember getting invited to a local tech conference in early June. It was a huge deal. Tickets had sold out months in advance. I was scheduled to be on a panel called Designing Emotion, which, given the year I just had, felt incredibly fitting. The venue was one of those glossy downtown places with floor-to-ceiling windows and painfully expensive coffee. I wore a tailored navy blazer, something I never thought I'd own, and I walked onto that stage without a single tremor. That was the day I truly understood I hadn't just survived Claire. I had rebuilt myself from the ground up, and somehow, inevitably, word got back to her. A week later, I received a direct message from an account I didn't recognize. It was Jenna, Claire's best friend. We weren't close, but she'd always been decent. The message was short. "Saw your talk. You're killing it. FYI, Claire's not doing great." I didn't reply, but Jenna must have said something, because not long after, the next escalation arrived, a lengthy email titled, "I'm proud of you." I read it purely out of curiosity, and it was exactly what I expected. She gushed about watching my panel online, how inspiring I was, how seeing me so confident and articulate reminded her of why she'd fallen for me. She ended it with, "I wish we could talk just once. I miss your voice." That's when I finally decided to respond, but not to her. I called Rick, my therapist, and just blurted out, "I don't want this person in my head anymore. What do I do with all this leftover weight?" He told me something I will never, ever forget. Not all closure comes from a conversation. Sometimes it comes from the life you live without them. So I doubled down on building that life. Later that summer, a recruiter from a massive creative firm in Chicago reached out. They'd seen my portfolio and were offering me a leadership role. The salary was literally double what I was making, and I'd be leading an entire team. The only catch, I had to relocate within 60 days. It wasn't even a decision. I said yes that very night. I sold the condo, packed up the few precious things I truly cared about, and moved across state lines to a sleek loft with exposed brick and tall ceilings, something I'd always dreamed of, but never thought I could actually afford. My first night in that new loft, I made pasta from scratch, jazz playing softly in the background. I sat by the window, sipping red wine, just staring out at the Chicago skyline. I didn't feel triumphant, not really. I just felt profoundly free. A few months later, I posted a photo of that exact view on my Instagram, a wide shot of the city lights with the caption, "Starting over was the best thing I never wanted." It wasn't aimed at anyone. It was just my quiet, honest truth. But Claire saw it. 3 days after I posted it, I received one last message. Her name popped up on my phone screen again, like a ghost I'd already buried. It simply read, "You really meant it. You're never coming back." I didn't reply. Some messages, I realized, are meant to echo unanswered. A year after that fateful game night, I found myself on a plane, heading to New York to speak at an international conference. Backstage, as I was preparing, a young designer approached me. "Hey," he said, a little shyly, "I just wanted to tell you your talk last year. It's the reason I didn't give up on design. You made me feel like it was okay to be the quiet one." I smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile. "Thanks," I told him. "That means more than you know." But deep down, I didn't know. Because not so long ago, I was the guy who let a room full of people laugh at his pain. And now, I was helping others feel seen, truly seen. And here's the thing about people like Claire. They don't truly move on. Not because they're still in love with you, but because they've lost control over their narrative. She didn't actually want me back. She wanted the version of me who would let her shine at my expense. The me who would smile through her cruel jokes, who would let the spotlight turn him into a shadow so she could bask in it. The moment I walked away from that role, her entire script collapsed. And I think that's what haunted her more than anything else. The fact that I simply stopped playing my part. After that final message, "You're never coming back," Claire finally went quiet for good. No more emails, no more texts, no more awkward check-ins from mutual friends casually asking, "Have you heard from Claire lately?" It was like the world, collectively, decided to turn the page right along with me. And I desperately needed that. Chicago became more than just a new city. It became my living, breathing proof. Proof that I was so much more than the shrunken version of myself she had always tried to create. I found friends who never once made jokes at my expense just to fill an awkward silence. I found co-workers who saw quiet confidence not as a weakness, but as a strength. I found places that felt like genuine homes, not just spaces I was constantly trying to survive within. About 6 months after moving, I started teaching a night class at a local design institute, just once a week. It wasn't a huge commitment, but I discovered I really loved helping other people find their own unique voice. One evening, one of my students, a shy but incredibly talented guy named Malik, stayed after class. He looked at me and said, "I almost dropped out last year. I didn't think someone like me could actually do this. But the way you explain things, it's like you really see people." That comment hit me harder than I ever expected. Because for so many years, all I ever wanted was to be seen. And now, I was helping other people feel that same validation, not by demanding they perform or change who they were, but simply by showing up as their authentic selves and realizing that, in itself, was more than enough. Eventually, I even started dating again. Cautiously at first. I wasn't looking for fireworks or fairy tales. I just wanted something profoundly real. I met Elise at a bookstore cafe. We both reached for the same copy of The Midnight Library. A classic rom-com moment, right? But it wasn't the initial spark that truly won me over. It was the deep comfort, the way she listened, truly listened, without a hint of judgment. The way she never, ever made me feel like I had to earn my place beside her. On our third date, I told her the game night story. Not the exaggerated, dramatized version, just the quiet, raw, painful truth. She didn't laugh. She didn't offer empty platitudes. She just reached across the table, gently touched my hand, and said, "That must have hurt so much. I'm so glad you left." It was the simplest thing, but it spoke volumes. By the time the anniversary of that awful game night rolled around, I barely even noticed. I only remembered when an old, automatic calendar reminder popped up that I hadn't deleted. Game night at home, 7 p.m. I stared at it for a moment, then I smiled. And I hit delete. That was closure. Not revenge. Not some dramatic confrontation. Just a profound, quiet act of moving forward with such unwavering certainty that the past simply couldn't find a way to pull me back anymore. But the universe, in its own mysterious way, often finds a poetic flourish to wrap things up. About a year and a half later, I was invited back to my old city for a panel discussion. Nothing massive, just a guest spot at a university's tech entrepreneurship series. After the talk, as I was mingling with some students, a familiar voice cut through the chatter and called my name. I turned, and there she was, Claire, her hair a little shorter, her eyes looking tired, her smile a practiced, brittle thing. "Noah," she said, as if my name itself carried some immense weight. "Wow, you look different." I just nodded politely. "Hey." She stood there, awkward, clearly waiting for me to say more. I didn't. Finally, she managed, "I saw your name on the program." I almost didn't believe it. "You're really doing well, huh?" "I am," I said simply. Then, I genuinely added, "I hope you are too." And I meant it, because the truth was by then I didn't feel anger anymore. Just distance. A vast, insurmountable distance that no apology, no longing glance could ever hope to cross. The kind of distance that comes when you've meticulously rebuilt your life so far beyond someone's reach that they become a closed chapter. Important, yes, sure, but definitively closed. She started to say something else, probably some carefully rehearsed line. But I gently excused myself and walked away. Not with bitterness, not with regret, just peace. That night, back in my hotel room, I opened my notebook. Yes, a new one. Not that old, tattered red one, but a sleek, black leather journal. Inside, pages filled with new poems, essays, ideas, even simple doodles. I had truly started writing again, not for validation, not to impress anyone, but purely for myself. On one of the last pages, I found a scribbled line I didn't even remember writing until I saw it again that night. The best revenge is becoming someone they'll never get to hurt again. And I think, really, that's the entire story. It's not about how Claire mocked my poetry. It's not about how she humiliated me in front of her friends. It's not even about how she desperately tried to claw her way back in when the consequences finally, truly hit her. The real story is that I left, and I never, ever looked back. The real story is that I finally discovered who I was when no one else was watching. That I stopped letting other people dictate my worth. That I transformed profound humiliation into genuine healing. That I burned my own bridge decisively and just kept walking until the smoke finally cleared. And when it did, there was an entire, vibrant skyline waiting for me on the other side.